St. Louis, Missouri, Gateway Arching. The bus rolled into Evansville, Indiana. I said goodbye to the friendly driver from Lexington, stayed on the bus, and promptly went back to sleep. As we drove through the night, I continued sleeping. When we approached the Mississippi River and the St. Louis Arch, I came fully awake. I would be changing buses here. It was only on reaching St. Louis that I became aware of my outward destination, Omaha, Nebraska. At the end of World War II, my mother married an Omaha soldier and went to live in his hometown of Omaha. 3 years later, after graduating from high school in Savannah, Georgia, I went to live with her. One of my stops along the way was St. Louis. I'm always amazed at the way the human mind works. Starting this trip, I never thought of my destination. Now I am able to see the connection. When I arrived in Omaha the summer of 1949, I enrolled at Omaha University. A year later, at the end of my freshman year, I married a Creighton University student whose home was St. Louis. In 1955, he received his medical degree and we moved to St. Louis, where he did his medical internship. St. Louis was our home for a year. That year, I was hired as a camp counselor at a stay-at-home camp at a settlement house recreation center. I took my inner-city campers on many outings to the cobblestone banks of the Mississippi River. The arch was not even a glimmer on someone's drawing board. Oh, the memories. Now, on this haiku journey, crossing the Mississippi, I look out the window, and I crane my neck to see the arching symbol of the gateway to the west. In the bus station, I took out my paints and sketched my first view of the arch, with a paddle-wheeler boat tied to the dock. I wrote, "In the starless night, St. Louis, gateway arching, late summer evening." Kansas City, Missouri, Jerry. Aboard the bus, early Monday morning, we arrived in Kansas City, Missouri. Here again, I retraced the steps of my 1949 journey from Georgia. At that time, my mother asked a friend of hers to meet me in Kansas City. Her name was Jerry. She and her husband met me at the station, drove me to their home, and prepared a delicious meal for me. They took such good care of me that Jerry and I became lifelong friends. It was years later I received the message that Jerry, a diabetic, was found dead in her kitchen. It was surmised that during the night, Jerry's blood count dropped and she was trying to get to the kitchen to eat something. On this haiku journey, I thought of my dear friend. As the sun rose, I looked out of the window of the bus station and watched as the sun illuminated the colorful roof and spire of a nearby church. After breakfast, I took out my supplies and painted the religious structure, completing the watercolor I wrote. Kansas City, Mo. The sun also rising here. September morning. Kansas City, Kansas. Think history. Traveling west, we crossed the Kansas City, Kansas. We crossed into Kansas City, Kansas. I thought of my brother's children who lived in Wichita, Kansas. Neither time nor locale would permit me to make the detour to visit them. However, I was moved to think Western, think history, and think haiku. I wrote, "Can you hear the echoes? Kansas Raiders, Wyatt Earp, all the seasons past."